Yeah. Very good morning, guys. Okay. So last day was explaining you about finalizers, right? Yeah. What did I say? Finalizer is also a special method like a constructor, and this method will be working opposite to the constructor. So this method is going to work opposite to a constructor. And very importantly about a finalizer, what did I say? The name of this method will be same as your class name. But to differentiate between a constructor and a finalizer, we prefix tilde operator here. And see, this is a constructor and this is a finalizer. And also the differences I said you. Constructors are called when the instance of a class is created and they're responsible for initializing the fields in a class, in a type. And in this process, the memory gets allocated. Whereas finalizers in a class are responsible for releasing the memory, which means these two will work in opposite. Constructor and finalizer will be working opposite. That's why the other name for a finalizer is a destructor. The other name for a finalizer is a destructor. We also call it as a destructor. Next. A constructor or finalizer are specific to a class. That is, they are not inherited to their child classes. They're completely specific to the class. They will not be inherited to the child class. Next. A constructor can have modifiers, whereas a finalizer cannot have any modifiers. No modifiers like public or static. You can't use any modifier on a finalizer, but we can use on constructor. We already know that. Next, constructor can be parameterized and so it can be overloaded, whereas finalizers cannot have any parameters and so they cannot be overloaded. Yeah, this is very important. The constructors can have parameters, parameterized constructors, and they can be overloaded. You can overload them. Whereas finalizers cannot have any parameters and so they cannot be overloaded. Constructors can be defined in a class or structure also, whereas the finalizer can be defined in a class only but not in a structure. You cannot define finalizers in a structure. Structure doesn't have finalizers. Next. Constructor must be called explicitly. We know that constructors are called explicitly. That is, we do that while creating the instance of class, whereas yeah, constructors must be called explicitly, and we do that while creating the instance of class, whereas finalizers are never called explicitly. So when will a finalizer execute? Finalizers execute when the instance of a class is destroyed and will be responsible for releasing the memory that got allocated for that instance. The responsibility is to release the memory. And when is it called? When the instance of a class is destroyed. Who will destroy the instance of a class? As discussed, the garbage collector. Actually, garbage collector is responsible for destroying the instance of a class. Next. When will garbage collector destroy the instance of a class? 3 scenarios we talked on it. 3 scenarios we discussed on it. What are the 3? In the end of any program's execution, garbage collector will destroy each and every instance. Each and every instance that is associated with the programs associated with the program in execution. Each and every instance that is associated with the program in execution. With the program in execution. Okay. So that is the first thing in the end of any program's execution. Sometimes in the middle of program's execution, if the memory is full, garbage collector is called implicitly by CLR to perform a cleanup of all unused objects in that application. This is the second scenario. Third one, we can also call the garbage collector explicitly into our program so that it will identify the unused objects and destroys them. Actually, 2 and 3 are the same only, guys. What is the difference? 2 is implicit calling. Who will call CLR? 3 is explicit calling. Who will call developer? Developer calls. How can we call? Is how we call. GC is a class and collect is a static method in the class. GC is a class and collect is a static method inside of the class. This can be done by invoking the static method collect of the class GC of the class GC. Okay. For example, you can call it like the GC dot collect. Okay. Yeah. I'll show you practically. Yeah. I'll show you practically. Guys, in this, I can show you first one and I can show you third one, but I cannot show you the second one. Why I cannot show the second one? Because that's not in my control. That's not in my control. Who will call? When will CLR call? We don't know. But 2 and 3 are very similar. That is happening in the middle of the program's execution only. But only thing is implicit calling and explicit calling. 2 cannot be shown. I can't show you 2. I hope you guys are clear. So 2 cannot be shown here. I can show you 3 and I can show you 1, but I cannot show you 2. Okay, I'll show you. Guys, observe this. Actually, in .NET Core and .NET 5, we have a drawback. In .NET Core and .NET 5, we have a drawback. What is the drawback? We cannot see the functioning of a finalizer in .NET Core, .NET 5, .NET 6 in all the new versions from .NET Core onwards, we cannot see the functioning of a garbage collector. We can't see that. That happens, but we can't see the functioning of a garbage collector. So if you want to see the functioning of a garbage collector, better go with a framework project. So till now we are working on Core and 5 projects only, right? Yes or not? So I shown you all, but let us also have a look on a framework project in our code now. Okay, framework project. So open a new project. Okay, open the Visual Studio, create a new project. So in the console applications, generally we have 2 console applications which are listed here, right? The first one is the latest. Yeah, the first one is the latest. Earlier, it used to show, just a minute, language, let me change, languages, C#. Earlier guys, before .NET 5, here it used to show you console application, .NET Core. It used to show you console application, .NET Core. But from 5 onwards, they stopped it showing it. Simply what they're showing is only console application. But this is Core, 5, all will come in this only. If you install the 6 framework, if you install the 6 runtime, 6 also will show. Actually, I did not install, I downloaded, I did not install that. But I just downloaded the 6 also. Downloads, yeah. The 6 SDK. I just downloaded here, did not install it still. If you install this also same, the latest. After 5, 6, November 6 came into market. So this is 6. So here, for Core 5, again showing all these things is confusing. That's why they started showing this for framework. So this is nothing but our latest. Core or 5 or 6 all will come here now. So select what? Console app .NET Framework. Console app .NET Framework. Okay now? Click on the next button. Give a name for it. I'll give the name as Finalizer Project. I'll give the name as Finalizer Project. Finalizers Project. Finalizers Project. Let us save in our own folder. C#7. Create. So there's a class by default called as a program class. There's a class by default called program class. And if you guys observe, you'll be having a project property window. Here, in this case, you don't have edit project file option. If you're working on framework, you'll not be having the option of edit project file here. Okay, you'll not have the option of edit project file. Then what to do? Generally, when you double click on it, edit project file will open there now. But if you double click on this, nothing will open. Nothing is going to open. So simply right click on this and choose the option called properties. And it will open you the project property window. This project property window is available there also. There also, yeah, we don't work with this. For setting the startup object, we use the XML file. But here we use project property window for setting the startup object. See here. Target framework is .NET framework. There you see the .NET, it will show you .NET Core or .NET 5 or whatever it is. On that I shown you. Changing also shown you. 5 I change it to 3.1 and shown you. Okay. So this is the framework what we'll be having. From here only you need to set the startup object, guys. From here only we need to set the startup object. A drop down will give you all the classes which contain main method will be listed there. You can select it. Now no need. Why? First class doesn't require startup object. Startup object is only from the second class onwards. The first class doesn't require a startup object for you at any context. Okay. Chandrasekhar, stop your video. Mr. Chandrasekhar, stop the video. Okay. Now, you have a class here called program.cs. I want to rename it. I want to name it as test demo. Nothing but destructor demo. Just like con demo, constructor demo. Now I'm defining a class called as test demo, destructor demo. Otherwise, I'll call it as the test demo 1. Test demo 1. Destructor demo 1. Now, guys, in this class, I want to define one constructor and one finalizer. And you know how to define? Public test demo 1. What is this? What is this? Constructor or finalizer? Constructor. What is this? Finalizer. If this executes, what is the meaning? If the first one executes, what is the meaning? Instance is created. If the second one executes, what is the meaning? Instance is destroyed. If the second one executes, instance is destroyed. If the first one executes, instance is created. If the second one executes, instance is destroyed. Now let me come to the main method, and here I am going to create the instance. Yeah, I am going to create an instance. Watch, how many instances I am creating? 3 instances. Okay, let me run the code. 3 instances created, and afterwards read line. Come on, run. See, first 3 instances created, it will show you instances created, instances created, instances created for 3 times. Okay, now what is happening? The read line statement is executing. After instance creation, we have read line. Read line statement is executing. When will read line statement finish the execution? When we hit the enter key. When will read line statement finish the execution? When we hit the enter key. Read line execution is completed when you hit the enter key now. Now when I hit the enter key, the execution of the read line statement is finished. Is it clear? When I hit the enter key, the execution of the read line statement is going to be finished. And don't forget, that is the last line in your program. That is the last line in the program. After that, there is no code to execute, right? Yes or not? Come back. Read the first one. Do you understand how many instances are associated with this? Louder. 3 instances. Hit the enter key and watch. Oh, sorry, guys. When you're running, use Control F5 and run. Otherwise, now also get, but window will close up. You can't see the output. Got it? Are you clear with the first one? What did I say? In the end of a program's execution, each and every instance that is associated with the program will be destroyed by the garbage collector. Every instance. What is destroyed? Every instance is destroyed. But in the middle, every instance is not destroyed. Unused instances are destroyed. Are you clear? In the end, what is destroyed? Every instance is destroyed. But in the middle, unused instances will be destroyed. Every instance will not be destroyed here. Okay? So watch. So first one is clear now. And what did I say? Second one. The second one I said I can't show you this. It's not in my control. This is not in my control. I cannot show you this. Okay? This is implicit call done by the CLR. When will CLR do? I don't know. CLR generally does when the memory is full. And we never know when the memory is full. Can you peep into the memory and see it is full or not? You don't know. Nah. Then when will CLR call? This cannot be tested. This will happen. But not in the end. What is it? Middle. Okay? A similar one, even though we can't test it, a similar one, we can try with the third one. By performing a explicit call. How to call? gc.collect. Now tell me, you want instances to be destroyed in the middle and anyhow everything will be destroyed. I want to see instances getting destroyed in the middle. In the end, anyhow everything is destroyed, but I want to see destroying in the middle. If you want to do destroying in the middle, what you do, before read line, let us call gc.collect. After read line, anyhow, we saw now. After read line, anyhow, all the instances that are destroyed. Just now I shown you. But when I'm calling it, before read line. And I want the instances to be destroyed before read line, means in the middle, not in the end. Okay, let's see. Nothing happened here. Now also, after read line only destroyed. Now also after read line only destroyed. Yes, sir. Now also after read line only destroyed. What is the difference? That's what I said to you guys. Unused objects or unused instances are destroyed. Not all the instances. What is destroyed? But there is no unused instance in your code now. There is no unused instance in your code now. Yes, sir. How to make it unused? We already learned. If you want to make an instance unused, you're required to dereference it by assigning null. By assigning null. And now run the code. Can you see that one instance is destroyed before the read line and two after the read line? Two are destroyed after the read line. Why? Because one is marked as unused. Same way. Oh God. I closed up the studio. Sorry guys. Here again. D3 is equals to null. D1 null, D3 null, and then calling gc.collect. Run. Are you clear? Instance is destroyed. One instance. Now you understood when you're writing the code, guys, when you're writing the code, generally make a habit. What is that? When you're writing code, you'll be creating instances of different classes. When you know that the work of an instance is completed, when you know that this instance job is completed, I'll not be using it anymore in the code, make a habit of assigning null to it. Are you clear? Make a habit of assigning null to it so that whenever the garbage collector comes into action, we'll pick up all these unused objects and destroys them. Is it clear or not? So garbage collector will come into picture, identifies all the unused objects. See, if I don't assign null also, they'll be destroyed, but not in the middle. When they'll be destroyed? End. So without waiting until the end of the program, what you do? Make a habit of assigning null to them. And mainly reference types only. You cannot destroy value types like this because I already said you value types once enter into the stack will be exiting from the stack only in the end of a program execution. In the middle, they cannot exit at all. Not possible. I hope you guys are clear. Okay, so that is what. So this is a good habit of doing it when you're trying to assign. When you just don't want to use them anymore in the code, just simply assign null to them so that instances will be destroyed behind the screen. Okay, now. So are you clear about the first and the third one now? Second is also same like third, guys. Second is also same like third. Only thing is, implicit calling will happen, but not the explicit calling. Okay, next. One more thing. Watch it. I'll add you another class here. We'll name this class as destructor demo 2. Dest demo 2. One more class here, same code, nothing difference. Here also, I wanted to define one. I want to define one constructor and one finalizer. No difference here, same code only. I'm creating one instance, test demo 2, D, test demo 2D, test demo 2 obj is equals to new. Creating one instance, that's all. And console dot. There's no difference in the previous code and current code. Both are same. Now I run also, I'll get the same, but I created only one instance now. How many? Only one. Open the project property window and here set the startup object. Okay, which class? Test demo 2. And run. Instance created, instance. No difference. And do you remember this, guys? What is this? If I inherit this class from test demo 1, if I inherit this class from test demo 1, you know that whenever the instance of a child class is created, it will internally invoke the parent class constructor for execution, right? You already know now. So when I create this instance now, how many times it will print you the message instances created now? 2 times. Why 2 times? First, parent class constructor. Afterwards, child class constructor. We debugged and also observed all those things. Check. Are you clear? Now the new thing what I am trying to tell is not only constructor, finalizer also gets called. That's what I am trying to show you. Not only constructor, finalizer also gets called. Okay, which one executes first? Tell me. Parent class constructor first or child class constructor first? Parent class constructor. Afterwards, child class. In the same way, which finalizer executes first? Parent or child? Louder. Wrong. Child. That's in the reverse order. Constructor calling is top to bottom and finalizer calling is bottom to top. How do you build a 3-storied building? Ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor. Yes or not? Can you build third floor, second floor, first floor, ground floor? No, no. When you're demolishing it, you're demolishing the building now. How do you demolish? Third floor, second floor, first floor, ground floor. You cannot demolish the ground floor first. If you demolish the ground floor first, dependency, that will come and fall on us all, you know. Yes or not? See how you build and how you destroy or reverse, na? Same here also. Constructor, finalizer calls are always in the reverse order. For understanding this, let me do one thing. Here I'll write instance 1 created, instance 1 destroyed. And here I'll write instance 2 created, instance 2 destroyed. Watch now. Which constructor is called first? Watch. Parent. Afterwards, are you clear? You cannot destroy parent first. Why? Child is dependent on parent. Yeah, because child is dependent on the parent, you are building parent first. But when you are destroying also, same logic apply. You cannot destroy the parent first. The child is dependent. So first the child should be destroyed. Afterwards parent. You're learning SQL now. You created parent-child tables. Parent-child tables, reference key, foreign key constraint. Which table you create first? Parent or child? Parent. Afterwards, child. In the same way, when you are dropping the tables, which table should be dropped first? Child table first and afterwards parent table. Dependency. Same thing only applies you here also. Exactly the same thing only applies you in this particular place also. This is all about how the creation, destruction will be happening for you. Are you clearer, guys? Understood? So this is about the finalizers. Now finally, the question is, do I really require to define finalizers in my class? Do I really require to define a finalizer in my class? Is it necessary to define a finalizer in my class? Is a big question now. Tomorrow you can be asked in interviews also. Do I really require to define these finalizers or destructors in the class? Okay, listen. As per the standards of object-oriented programming, as per the rules of object-oriented programming, finalizers are very important in every class. I repeat, as per the rule of object-oriented programming, finalizers are very important in a class. Are you getting my point or not? What is important? Finalizers. Finalizers are very important in a class. They're very, very important in a class. Okay. So very important in a class for releasing the memory, Okay. And suppose if you, that is what as per the object-oriented programming standards. Now, second point, if we are working with unmanaged object-oriented programming languages like C++, if we are working with unmanaged object-oriented programming languages like C++, it is mandatory to define a finalizer in every class. It is mandatory to define a finalizer in every class for releasing of the memory. But if you are working with managed, object-oriented programming languages like Java, Python, .NET, managed na, they're under the runtime control. If you're working with the managed languages like Java, Python, and .NET, defining a finalizer is not going to be mandatory because garbage collector is available to you to take care of the memory management. Are you clearer or not? Garbage collector is available for taking care of the memory management. That's the reason why in managed object-oriented languages, finalizers are optional. But in unmanaged object-oriented languages, finalizers are mandatory. Is my point clear? Yes or not? Okay, so this is the answer what you need to give in the interview. So the interviewer asks you, is it necessary to define a finalizer in the code? Yeah. As per the standards of object-oriented programming, finalizers are very important in releasing the memory and we need to define it. But second point, what you should say, if we are working with unmanaged object-oriented languages like C++, defining finalizers is very important. But whereas when you are working with managed object-oriented languages like Java, Python, .NET, defining the finalizers is only optional because garbage collector will take the responsibility of memory management for us. Is it clear? Yes or not? I've shown you this finalizer not to explain about a finalizer. I've shown you the finalizer to make you understand about the garbage collector, guys. I have taken finalizer as an opportunity to describe you the functioning of a garbage collector. You saw no instances getting destroyed by the garbage collector. I just used the finalizer there as an opportunity for you to describe how a garbage collector will function for you. That's all. Otherwise, finalizers are least defined for us in the code. Okay, one more question. Is there any scenario we define finalizers in managed languages also? Is there any scenario we define finalizers in managed languages also? Yes. If your application is dealing with any unmanaged resources, if our applications are dealing with any unmanaged resources like files, databases, what is unmanaged resource? Nothing here, simple wording here. Managed resource and unmanaged resources means unmanaged resources under operating system control. Managed resources are under runtime control. That's all. Unmanaged, managed is simple. Unmanaged means under whose control? Operating system. Managed means runtime control. If my application is using any unmanaged resources like files, databases, I'm working with a file, I'm working with a database, I'm dealing with a network. All these are not under the framework's control, remember, not under the runtime control. They are under, say, you installed a database on your computer. Why the database is under runtime control? Database is never under runtime control. Database is separate software. You have a file on your hard disk that is under operating systems control. These are all coming under unmanaged resources. If your application is dealing with any unmanaged resources, listen, if your application is dealing with any unmanaged resources, we use the finalizers for releasing those unmanaged resources. We use the finalizers for releasing those unmanaged resources. I'll tell you an example. I am opening a file. I'm opening a file on the hard disk. Okay. I want to write into the file. And all of you in your C language, you learned this, remember? If I open a file for writing, I need to close it again. Every file you open should be closed again. Otherwise, the data will not be saved. The data will not be persisted until you save the file. So saving a file is very, very important. You open it and you should close it also. Okay. Now to open a file, we are provided with a class called as file stream class. To open a file, we are provided with a class called as file stream class. You can use the file stream class and you can open a file on the hard disk. You can write into the file. You can close the file. You can do all the things. Are you clear? Now see, I used the file stream class here. I opened it. I was writing into the file. All the things are done. But I did not close the file. I did not close the file. I did not close the file. I did not dereference the file stream instance also. I did not close the file. I did not dereference the file stream instance also. In the end of a program execution, garbage collector will come now and it destroys the file stream instance, because already I shown you, even I don't dereference also end of the program, everything will be dereferenced. Garbage collector will come now and destroys the file stream instance. Why? File stream is a class and is a part of your .NET. But garbage collector will not close the file, guys. Garbage collector will not close the file. What it will do? It will only dereference the instance and destroys it. But it is not responsible for closing the file. It won't close the file because file is not a part of your framework or your runtime. File stream class is a part of your runtime, but file is not a part of your runtime. Okay, so it will leave the file and it will close the file stream now. It will leave the file and it will destroy the file stream. The file will not be closed. If the file is not closed, what is the problem? The content will not be saved. If the file is not closed, what is the problem? The content will not be saved. It won't do that. That's what I'm telling you. When you're dealing with unmanaged resources, okay, we define the finalizers, and that too for doing what, not for writing any huge coding, just only to close them. Only to close them. Only for closing only we use them. Other than that, we don't write anything there. Just only code for closing the files and all. So when garbage collector is destroying the instance, finalizer calls now. So automatically all the things will be closed for you properly. Other than that, we don't use finalizers anywhere in our code. In case we are dealing with any unmanaged resources only, we use the finalizer, that too to close them. That's it. Is that clear? Open the notes, guys, once. Is number 97. In the bottom, you have conclusion about finalizers. Can you see that? I read it. Is it clear? What is it telling you in the last? However, when your application encapsulates unmanaged resources such as files, databases, and network connections, you should use finalizers to free those resources. Are you clear? Otherwise, finalizers are not at all required for us in our code. They are not at all important for us in the code. Is it clear, everyone? Okay, this is all about the finalizers. What is the next member? The next member is properties. The next member is properties. So what are these properties? What are these properties? Listen, all of you, concentrate on this. I have a public class like this, public class circle. In this class, I'm declaring a field double radius. Okay, double radius. I'm declaring a field. Okay, my class is public. My class is public. So can I create the instance of the class wherever I want? Yes or not? Already we learned it. When it's public, you immediately get a chance to create the instance wherever I want. So now in another project, I want to create the instance of the class circle now. Understood? This is my second project, guys. Here I have a class called as test circle. And here what I'm doing, I'm going to create the instance of the class circle. Circle C is equals to new circle. Created the instance. Created the instance here. Are you clear? Okay, I created the instance. When you create the instance, automatically radius is initialized. When you create an instance, every member of the class is initialized, na? Automatically radius is initialized. Even though it is initialized, I cannot access it from test circle. Even though it is initialized, I cannot access it from test circle. Why? Because it is private. Watch, we already learned default scope for a member of a class is private. So can I access the radius out of the class now? What is the scope of the radius? Fast, yaar. Private, I'm telling now, fast. Within the class, it is accessible only within the class. Is not accessible out of the class. So out of the class, this cannot be accessed because every member of a class is by default. Class is public. Class public doesn't mean that members are public. Members are private by default. You did not give any scope there. So because you did not give any scope there, they are not accessible outside of the class. So I can create an instance, but I cannot access the radius. But I want to access. I want to access. Understood the requirement? I want to access. Then how to provide access to the radius outside of the class now? How to provide access to radius outside of the class? Are you following me? So if you want to provide the access to radius out of the class, we can provide this in different ways. We can provide the access in different ways. Option number one. Guys, observe. Option number one. I'm opening a notepad, another one. The first option. The first option is declare the field as public. The first option is declare the field as public. Once declared public now tell me from here, can I simply call c.radius and access it or not? What am I doing? I'm getting the value of radius. I'm getting the value of radius. And the next line, I'll say c.radius is equals to 34.55. What am I doing now? I'm setting a new value to radius. I'm getting the, is it clear all of you? I'm getting the old value of radius and I'm setting a new value to radius. Okay. So this is what exactly we're just trying to do in this context. This is what exactly we are trying to do in this context. So once declared as public, automatically access is given now? Yes or not? Okay. The drawback in the above approaches, once the field is declared as public, anyone can get the value as well as set the value also. Are you getting my point or not? The drawback in the above approach is once the field is declared as public, anyone can get the value as well as set the value also. You can get the value and set the value also. I hope you guys are clear what I'm telling you. So once we declare it as public, anyone can get the value and anyone can set the value. Both the two things can be done. Getting it can be done as well as setting also can be done. So we don't have we don't have any control over the value. We don't have any control, guys. Public, anyone can get, anyone can set whatever. But my requirements are different. I want to give only get access to the value. I want to give only get access to the value. Means setting should not be possible. I want to give only set access to the value. Means getting should not be possible. I can't do anything now. Why? Once public, you're giving the right automatically to others. Once public, you're giving the right automatically to others. Point clear or not? Understood my point? What I'm telling you? Once public, you're giving the right automatically to others. So the point to understand here is anyone can get the value as well as anyone can set the value. Easily getting and setting is going to be possible. No restrictions will apply in this case. I hope you guys are clear or not. Understood or not? So that is what. So once you declared public, that is the problem what you will be facing with this one. Anyone can get the value as well as anyone can set the value. No restrictions will apply for you in this case now. So this is the biggest drawback once you declare public. Are you clear? Second option. What is the other way? The other way, I said you, different options are there. Okay. The other way, how you can give access to the value is don't declare it public. I just now said you, if you declare public, what is the problem? I said you, don't declare public. Without declaring it public, what you need to do, without declare, see, to overcome the above drawback, okay, without declaring the field as public, okay, leave it as private only, and then define a property on that field. Carefully listen. What I'm telling you, right, to overcome the problem, what I said, you don't declare public, leave it private only. And afterwards, what do? Define a property on that field. Now you'll have a doubt. What is this property, sir? Okay, listen. What is a property? A property is a member of the class used for exposing the values that are associated with the class to the outside environment. Okay. So what is the property? Property is a member of class used for exposing the values that are associated with class to the outside environment. We are going to expose the values of a class to the outside environment. Okay. And the main associated that are associated with the class to the outside environment. The main advantage with these properties is we can give access to the values in 3 different ways. We can give access to the values in 3 different ways. What are the 3 different ways? 1, only get access. Only set access. Both get and set access. Did you understand? When I say public, what type of access it is? Get set access. When I say public, it's get set access. I can't stop it. I want to give only get access, or I cannot give only set access. Not possible. Once declare public, what type of access are you giving? Get set access. But now I have 3 options, you understand? I can give only get access. I can give only set access. I can give both get and set access. Okay. If you want to give only get access, you need to define a read-only property. If you want to give only set access, you need to define a write-only property. You want to give both get and set access. You need to define read and write property. Are you clear? But how to define these properties now? How to define a property? Okay, guys, observe how to define a property. This is the syntax, guys. Modifiers, you already know them. I don't require to give an explanation for you now. Okay, type. What type of value you want to expose now? Integer or double or float or string or whatever it is. Name of the property. In this, you'll be having two blocks of code. In this property, again, you'll have two blocks of code. First one is called get accessor. Second one is called set accessor. Okay, so now guys, observe it. The code we write in the get accessor gets executed when we are reading the field value through the property. When we are reading the field value through the property. What is reading the value? Array, already shown you guys. This is what reading the value. That's what reading the value. See, you're reading the value now. When you're reading the value, see this line. This is the reading the value. Which block will execute? Get access. Okay. Next. The code we write in the set accessor gets executed when we are assigning or writing a new value to the field through the property. When we are writing a value, it will be enough. When we are writing a value to the field through the property. So did you understand the point or not? First one is when we are reading the value. Second one when we are writing a value. What is writing a value? Array, this is writing a value. This is reading the value. This is writing the value. Sorry guys, I typed it wrong. C dot radius is equals to. Are you clearer or not? Okay. And now see, how many blocks of code a property has? Two blocks, get and set. Okay. See, while defining the property, if we define both get and set accessor, then the property is when we define both get and set accessor, then the property is a read-write property. Excuse me. Whereas if we define only get accessor, then the property is a read-only property. And if we define only set accessor, then the property is a write-only property. Are you clear? Understood? Huh? So see, if we define both get and set accessors, then the property is a read-write property. Whereas if we define only get accessor, then the property is a read-only property. And if we define only set accessor, then the property is a write-only property. Are you clear? So how to write this property? How to write the property? Okay, I'll show you. See guys, all of you carefully listen to me. I have 100 fields in my class. How many? But I want to expose only 10 fields out of the class, not all the 100. How many want to expose? Only 10. So then, do I require to define properties for all the 100 or only 10? Only 10 only. Why? Array, which one you want to expose, then only property will come. Otherwise, no need to define a property now. I want to expose 10. So, number of properties are also 10. Generally, we follow a rule here. What is that? Array, all the fields are declared on the top. Afterwards, you define constructors, methods, properties. Like this, we just define in a sequential order. Okay? Now, tomorrow, you write some code today. You have 100 fields now. You defined 10 properties and 10 fields. After a month, if I ask you, on what fields did you define the properties? After a month, if I ask you, on what fields did you define the properties? Do you remember? Do you remember? Yesterday, what I say only, today you'll forget. And 1 month afterwards, if I ask you, you don't even just, you will ask me, did I define a property first? So that's what you'll be. You don't remember at all first. Then how's that? Big, tomorrow in the real time, thousands of lines of codings will be there. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lines of code will be there. How do I remember, yeah, on which field did I define a property? Very complex to remember this. Nah? That's why coding conventions are very, very important. When we are writing the code, every time I just say, you are follow this, interface names, prefix with I. All the coding conventions I'm teaching you. These coding conventions are very, very important. When you want to define a property on a field, make a habit of declaring the field, prefixing with a underscore. This underscore indicates this field is associated with a property. I won't declare all the 100 fields with underscore. How many fields I'll declare with underscore? 10 only. And those 10 only will have properties now. Did you understand me or not? Okay, this underscore is used here to specify that we are defining a property. Is it clear? Now, shall I write a property on the field now? Watch. I want to write a property on a field. How do you write? Public. See the syntax. Modify a public. Type. What type of value? Double. Array. What type of value you're exposing? Double. And then name. Generally, we do this also. What you know? Field name and property name will be same only. But two members with the same name, no problem. Already field is prefixed up with underscore. So no issues. Both are not same now. But generally when you look, both looks like radius only. The underscore is only to differentiate. But we ignore this. Generally what is it? Field name, radius. Property name, radius. But how do you differentiate it? Field has an underscore, no worries. Both are not same. Are you clear? Now look. I wanted to give, I want to write a get accessor. When will the code in the get accessor execute? Read. When we are reading the field value through property, means you're trying to read the field value through property. Watch it carefully. I'm trying to read the value now. How? Double radius is equals to C dot. See, understand? I'm calling the property, guys. I'm not calling the field. What I'm calling? And with this, I'm trying to read the field value now. Are you clear? Okay. Now, what is the code in this? Very simple code. Get return underscore radius. That's all. See, guys, I'm reading the value. Which block will execute? Array, get block, not read only. Which block will execute? Get block will execute. What did you write in the get block? Louder. Return, yeah, returns the value and the value comes here now. That's all. Simple code, not any great logic. Okay. So you're reading the value. You are reading the value. Control jumps to get block. Immediately what will happen? The logic execute. What is the logic? Return underscore radius, not radius, underscore radius. Means field value. So field value will come now into the radius. Okay. Now see, out of the class, can I touch underscore radius? No, you can't. That is private. So the access is given only through radius, only through the radius. Now see, your written only get na? Yes or not? So the property is a read-only property. You can only get the value. Setting is not possible. Did you catch my point or not? What is not possible? Setting is not possible, guys. Are you clear? I'm sorry. Getting is not possible. I said wrong. I'm sorry. What is not possible? Setting is not possible, right on me. Because we defined a getter. What is not possible? Setting is not possible. You can't set a value. This is valid. But in the next line, if I try to say C dot radius is equals to, and I'm trying to assign a new value like this, I can't do. I cannot do now. Are you clear? Now this is valid and this is invalid. But guys, just comment it. Now let me explain you setter also. Set. When will the setter execute? I said you. Read. Writing a value to the field, or otherwise when we are writing a new value, that will be more clear. When we are writing a new value to the field through the property, means see, you are assigning the value through the property only. Watch. Means you are assigning through the property and the value should come to field now. You are assigning to the property and the value should come to field now. What value? What value is present here? That value. Are you clear? Always 34.55 or the value what is assigned. The value which is assigned. How do you write the code, you know? Watch guys. Set. Underscore radius. Underscore radius means your field is equals to what you want, user assigned value, right? That's it. That's it. Now, guys, this is valid. This is valid, but this is invalid now. Why? I commented get C. I commented get because I commented getting is not possible. What is possible? Setting is possible. Now understand. Just a second. Property is read only. Watch, concentrate on the screen. Property is read only. Write only. Property is write only. Read write, not both. Property is read write. Property is read write. Did you understand me? Now, read only, not get, read only. Now, write only. Now it is write only. Now, it is read write. So choice is yours. How you wanted to define. Now see, you have more control now. But once I declare public, I don't have any control. Anyone can get, anyone can set. I don't have any control on this. Now I have full control on this. I can give access as per my requirement. And now, after explaining this, set is write here, not read. You are writing the value, not reading the value. This is reading. Get means read. Very simple English, get is read. So this is read only. Okay, if I write get means it is purely read only. If I write set means only write only. If I write both means read write. Okay, so now you understand. You'll have a doubt here. Sir, right now you written both get and set. So it is read only. Yeah, read only. Anyone can get, anyone can set. Yeah. But when anyone can get, anyone can set, what is the need of writing a property again? If you directly make the field public, then also anyone can get, anyone can set now. Did you understand my question? That's what we already concluded here. What is that? Here the field is public. Anyone can get, anyone can set. Yes or not? When you want anyone to get the value, anyone to set the value, is it necessary to define a property again? If I remove this and make public, then also this code will work now. Yes or not? But doing that is wrong. Should never do that again. The advantage of writing a get and set now is, the advantage of writing a read-write property without making the field public is, what is your confusion? Simply if you make public, problem solved now. Yes or not? Make it public, sir, problem solved now. Why property again? Waste of time typing work or lesser typing work now? No, the problem is not solved. Why? Because I want a small condition now. What is the condition? The new value should not be less than the old value. I want a condition. The new value should not be less than the old value. If the new value is less than the old value, the value assignment should not be working. This code should not function now because the new value is less than the old value now. Yes or not? But the value directly comes to radius. You cannot write any condition anywhere. Where will you write a condition here? When you are assigning a value to a field, no block of code will execute. So condition writing is not possible now. So now see, I said you public means anyone can get, anyone can set. I said you don't have control on the value. Why I said that word? You don't have any control, you know. Tomorrow you can assign anything you want. Yeah, I can make 0. Understood my point? But my requirement is not like that, guys. The new value should always be greater than the old value. Suppose it's an employee class and it is a salary. Employee class and salary. Can the new salary be less than the old salary? Huh? Should not be less than. So that when you try to assign a new value less than the old value, the system should not accept now. But now it accepts. So to avoid the problem, to avoid this particular problem, don't do this. What do? Define a property. Define a property. How can I control? I can control. How? Tell me, guys. Now, when you're assigning a value to the field radius, is it directly going or is it going through this block? Is the value 34.55 directly going to underscore radius or it is going through that set block? Louder. Going through set block. Am I correct? Yes or not? Okay. So because it is going through set block, I can write a condition in my code now tomorrow. What is the condition? If what? Value is greater than underscore radius, then only underscore radius is equals to value. Did you understand? Now tell me, can I assign a value less than the existing? Tell me. I can't assign. I cannot assign. It doesn't accept the assign a value less than the existing. That is the advantage of writing the property. I hope you are clear. If you don't define a property and you make it public, control is lost. You can assign any value. Condition writing is important. Any block of code will not execute when we are assigning a value to a field. I repeat, any block of code will not execute when we are assigning a value to a field. But a block of code will execute when we are assigning a value to a field through a property. We are not doing a direct assignment. What is present? Property is there. Through the property we are doing. Are you clear? Understood everyone? What is the advantage now? Even read write also don't make public. So a thumb rule remember every time. What is that, you know? Every field of a class should every time be private only. Fields of a class should every time be private only. That is the thumb rule we follow in the industry. Fields are always private. But I want to expose it, sir. You want to expose it, then define a property. You want to expose it only read-only access, get property. Only write-only access, set property. Read-write access, get set property. But never go with public fields. Going with public fields is completely against the standards of the industry. Any doubts? Understood? Now, you know, we have a big question here. You're not getting any doubts at all. Where is this value, sir? That is, you should ask this question now. You did not declare the value anywhere and you're writing is equals to value. When I ask the question, you will say, yeah. Where did you declare it? Show me. In the class, where is it declared? It's not declared anywhere in the class now. Yes or not? Without declaring, how did you get this value? This is implicitly declared. This is implicitly declared. And it is considered like a parameter of a method. This is just like a parameter of a method. You see, you are writing a method. For a method, I am writing double value. What is the double value? Parameter. So this is also like a parameter of the method. Then what is the data type of this, sir? What is the data type of this? You are telling implicitly declared. What is the data type? The data type is the same type of your property. Your property is which type? So this is also double only. If your property is a string, this is also string only. If your property is Boolean, this is also Boolean only. Did you understand me or not? That is what. I don't require to declare this anywhere. That is automatically declared and considered like a parameter of your property. Just like method parameter, this is a property parameter. No need to declare. Are you clear? And Hrishikesh and Muhammad, that's what I'm telling. It's not object. It's not object. But the object, again, I require to perform unboxing. But the object I need to perform unboxing. Na? An object cannot be directly assigned to double. It's not an object. It is double. Why? Your property is double. So that is also double. Is it clear? Okay. So that's what. So from now onwards, whenever you are planning to define a class, when you're planning to define a class, every class will have some set of fields in it. No doubt. And now decide yourself. What is it? What fields need to be exposed outside? What fields need to be exposed outside? Identify them and declare them with underscore first. Okay. And afterwards, what you do? Define properties based on the requirements. Define properties based on the requirements. Do you remember this? Entity. Do you remember the word entity? Once we discussed about this entity, every class represents an entity. Every class represents an entity. Entity has attributes now. Attributes of an entity are defined in the form of properties. Attributes of entities are defined in the form of properties. Recollect, I already explained that concept to you. Read this. First point, define a class where each class should represent an entity. Second point, on that day, when I explained about this, I said you are a property, nothing but field, I said you. Array, define properties and I said you are nothing but field only, I said you. Are you clear? It's field only. It's not field, guys. Property is different. But field and property are tightly coupled with each other. Array, field and property are tightly coupled with each other. We define a property to expose a field. These two are interconnected with each other. Are you clearer or not? Okay. And one more day, we learned about arrays, remember? On that day, listed you the members of the array class. Sort, reverse, copy. When I explained about these particular members, watch it. Sort, reverse. Sort is a method. Where braces are there, they are methods. Coming to length, there is no brace. What did I say on that day? This is a field. What did I say? This is a? No, guys, it's not a field. I very clearly said you, that's a property only. Because on that day, you don't know what is a property, I said you field. On that day, because you don't know what is a property, I said you field. Fields will never be public at all. Fields will never be public at all. Fields are always private only. They will never be public. Are you clear? So, to expose that field, what will be present? Property. Arrays are fixed length or variable length? Arrays are fixed length or variable length? Fixed length, yeah, not variable length. Arrays are not variable length. Arrays are fixed length. We already discussed on this. Arrays are fixed length. We can never change the size of an array. If length is a field, do you know what is the problem? It will allow me to assign a new value. But arrays are fixed length, then how can you assign a new value to it? Then what is length, sir? Length is a read-only property in the class array. Length is a read-only property in the class array. You can't assign a value. If you try to assign, you get an error. Strings are fixed length or variable length? Strings are fixed length or variable length? Strings are immutable. You watched the video and string builder and again you're telling variable length. Strings are fixed length, right? Strings are immutable. You cannot modify them. Yes or not? Once you declare a string, you can't modify. If you try to modify, what is happening? Another copy gets created for you. Strings are immutable. I given the video and watched it also. String versus string builder. Which one to use we discussed? Strings are string builders. String builder. Again, you're telling strings are variable length now. Strings are immutable. Okay. Let us not talk as a fixed length or variable length. Strings are immutable. Means once declared, cannot be altered with the size. Yes or not? Same string class also has a length property, guys. That's also read-only only. That is also read-only. All these are read-only properties. Watch it. Watch this. Int ARR is equals to, I'm declaring an array. All of you, carefully watch. ARR dot. In IntelliSense, you will get the list of the members now. Array, in IntelliSense, you get the list of the members now. This purple color icon, the purple color icon represents it's a method. The purple color icon represents it's a method. This spanner icon represents it's a property. Are you clear? And fields will be in blue color. Fields will be in a box, blue color box. Watch it. There is no field at all. Doesn't mean that they did not declare fields in the class. They declared it, but all are private. Never, nothing is exposed for you. To expose them, what did they give you? Properties are given. To expose them, properties are given. Okay? Watch him. To know the type of property it is, put your mouse on that and watch it. What is it telling you? Means read-only property here. It's a read-only. Sync root. Read-only. Rank. Read-only. Long length. Read-only. Is synchronized. Read-only. Is read-only. Read-only. Is fixed size. See, mostly the properties in this particular thing are all read-only properties. Doesn't mean that every property will be read-only. Their requirement is read-only. They defined it read-only. So tomorrow, based on our requirements, will be changing up the appropriate things. Okay. Same way you can check with a string class also. String str is equals to hello. Str dot. In this, there is only one property, guys. Oh, this is another thing called this also. See there, length. Which type? Read only. Oh, sorry. This length. This. That's also read only. That is also read only. It's also read only. Okay. So we'll be having read only, read write, write only. How you can recognize? When you put your mouse, it will show you. If it shows get set, that is read write. If it shows only set, write only. If it shows only get, read only. You can access it as per the requirements. So did you understand about the property? Yes or not? So tomorrow I'll practically show you defining them and working with them. Okay, let's stop here. We'll meet tomorrow.